let us get to talking about the topic that we have at hand. And then the first one that seems to be catching a lot of people's attention. While Nigerians are still coping with the reality of telecoms operators increasing their price, CBN too came up with their own increment. That is for the automated teller machines, the ATM machines. If you are withdrawing from banks, that is different from your bank you're using. If you are using a different ATM card with a different bank's ATM, which is supposed to attract charges now. A lot of Nigerians are already complaining of how tough things are, and then we get slapped with these changes back to back, which one could say could leave a lot of Nigerians feeling defeated. But now let us have the reaction of Tola Akimutimi. What are your thoughts on the present increment in charges that Nigerians seems to be facing? They are focusing on the CBN increasing the ATM charges and the one of the telecom operators too.
I think essentially it's a development that naturally will come with some complaints from ordinary Nigerians by virtue of the fact that it was some element of tax on the customers of the banks. But what we have in real terms is that, is this policy having medium or long-term benefits for the economy? I think when we look at it from fiscal perspective and monetary perspectives, especially when we are talking about digital economy, empowering, strengthening our systems for improved efficiency, we may not necessarily have to be clamoring and shouting, oh, bring it down, bring it down. I have listened to some customers, I have spoken with some officials of central bank, I've interacted with also with some officials of banks in the country since 2-3 days ago after the policy was announced. When we look at it, the issue is, one, you are not paying additional fee or charge for online or on-set transactions. That is to say, if on-site, that is to say, if you are having First Bank as your bank and you want to do your transactions, there are no additional charges. Most of the charges have to do with off-site charges. That is, if I hello, are you listening?
Yes, please go ahead. Go on.
Yeah, so yes, it is off-site charges that are actually challenged. So I think if we really want to look at it, it might not necessarily impact so much negatively on bank customers. All that it will require customers to do will be go to your bank, do your transaction, and minimize your cost of transactions. I spoke with one of the top CEOs of the banks. He told me that, look, what we are paying on ATMs on a monthly basis is so humongous that ATMs are no longer commercially, supportive. That presupposes that most of the banks are actually paying so much for maintenance, for fees, for their ATMs. But as it were now, what we needed to really do is to really explore the opportunities of doing transactions on site. GTB customers go to GTB, UBA customers go to UBA, First Bank go to First Bank. To that extent, we can, in real terms, optimize our transactions, electronic transaction in such a way that it might not necessarily be as damaging as we may think of it.
Okay, thank you so much for that. And now to Bola Onlejide, what's your own reaction about this increased charges that Nigerians seems to be facing from different sectors of the economy?
Okay, you're talking about different sectors now, not just the ATM charges. The reality of doing business in Nigeria today is that there is an increase in cost profile generally. So if you take the telecoms, for example, we were told that they've not even been able to increase their own tariff, at least not officially, for about 11 years. So you now think about the fact that they are in this same economy where dollar has gone from 400 naira 2 years ago or 3 years ago to 1,500. Meanwhile, not a single equipment of the telecommunication company is manufactured in Nigeria. Not one. All of them are imported. That is on one side. On the other side is operational cost. We're not talking of capex now. We've moved away from capex. Operational cost, we've seen how the cost of diesel has gone up. The cost of petrol has gone up. The cost of electricity has gone up. So we must begin to ask ourselves, is it realistic that the tariff of the telecoms company will remain the same? When you take one of the major ones, in fact, the foremost one, for example, it used to be one of the most profitable businesses in Nigeria. In 2023, that business declared a humongous loss. As a matter of fact, not only did it declare loss, its entire shareholders' fund was totally wiped off. That situation has not improved in 2024. The loss in 2024, first half, if I can remember very well, was even bigger than the 2023. So we must begin to ask ourselves questions at that stage. Are we going to be watching till all this company die? If the telecoms industry or companies should die on us, will that help the nation? Will it empower us if we cannot make calls again? If we cannot use our internet again? If our financial services are going to go comatose, security services will be greatly impacted. Are we going to wait till that time? The question is no. So we must find a way to ensure that they also can take in a little bit more. They have a little bit more cushion to absorb some of this cost. Otherwise, they will die. And when they die, they will take many things along with them. What you're saying on one side, which I hear loud and clear, is that we also don't want them to add to the burden of the consumer. Or we don't even want them to also fleece the consumer. So that is why they have a regulator. The regulator will step in that middle and have to have some engagement to have a balance, something that will ensure that these companies can survive, and at the same time that it will not be too burdensome on the consumers. I believe that is what has landed us at the 50% tariff increase where we are right now, as opposed to the 100% that the operators were asking for when they started. So we're just because of the importance of this particular service, telecommunication is regarded as an economic infrastructure. You take it out of that space today, we will have major security challenges. We will have major financial services challenges. In fact, you will not be listening to me as you are listening to me now if we take that service out. So because of the importance of this particular service, that is why government has to regulate it, and that is what they have done. Otherwise, the woman who is selling yam in the market did not take our permission before I increase the price of the yam. The same thing goes for all other things that are not regulated. So we must understand the balancing that is going on here. I think it is all right to increase the tariff a little bit so that they can also remain in business. You can imagine that one of those telecom business is the largest corporate taxpayer in Nigeria, and he has not made profit for 2.5 years. I mean, for 2 years. It's something we have to address. So the tariff will go up. Maybe Nigerians will have to find ways of adjusting. If you used to greet your friend for 5 minutes before, greet him for 3.5 minutes and move on. So that those are part of the what do you call it, lifestyle adjustment that may need to come into that place to ensure that we can manage the burden, the additional burden that will come upon us by virtue of increase in tariff.
All right, thank you so much for that. And now to Tola Akimutimi. When it comes to this issue of increasing this telecom operators increasing their tariff across board, it seems that they've all been able to implement it for SMS. SMS cost now has really been increased by 50%. But when it comes to call for some network providers, they are yet to touch their tariff on call, but for a particular company that has touched their own tariff on call, it seems to be more than 50%. In fact, reports show that this increment is up to 76%, depending on the call plan that one is on at that moment. Now we have the House of Rep member moving the motion that perhaps the federal government, that is through the NCC and the Minister for Communications, to do something about this, probably to halt it for a while until we have better service. Because a lot of Nigerians too have been complaining about very bad services these days. So do you think that that call for them to put a pause on it might be needed at this point in time? Because what is the essence of paying extra for something that you are not getting the value of it yet? Okay, Tola Akimutimi, do you want me to repeat the question? Well, it seems it's not with us at this time. So, all right, then we'll carry on with Bola Olojede. Now, still on this issue of the tariff hike, we have the House of Rep moving motion that perhaps the federal government through the NCC should halt this tariff hike until Nigerians get better service. Because what is the point of, paying for something, paying higher for something, but then you are not getting the value? Do you agree with that, that perhaps they should stop it first? Then when we are actually getting the value, then of course they could go ahead and increase the tariff.
Or myself? Hello?
Okay, yes, please
Hello?
go ahead.
Okay. As I was saying, I said the call by the House of Representatives members for the suspension of the tariff is belated for now. Like Mr. Bolahan has said, you look critically at all the parameters of this adjustment. You will naturally know that the time to adjust has really come. We can't afford a situation where we're talking about digital economy, then the main champions, the hub of driving that economy is destroyed or they are allowed to go down. So for us, I think the best of options is for us, as Mr. Bolahan has said, to minimize our costs on calls, on data, to the extent that whatever it is, we can comfortably adjust to such adjustments. And one thing that is very clear and very good is that apart from the Nigerian Communication Commission, the Federal Consumers Agency, CPPC, is also working together with the NCC now to the extent that issues of customer service abuses are frontally tackled. So with the collaboration of FCCPC as well as the NCC, I think Nigerian customers should find a way, if they have any problems relating to overcharging or poor services, to really make their cases known to these regulatory institutions to the extent that it will be a win-win situation for every one of us, the telcos, Nigerians, the economy, and everybody in this space. I have said it before, and I continue to say it. If we require Nigeria's economy to be put on the pedestal of digital super speed, we can't afford to let the telco operators go in the way they're going. So for us, it is about adjustment. It is about approaching the regulatory authorities if our rights are abuses, including the NCC, as well as the FCC, to ensure that these telecom operators are actually adding value to subscribers' lives, businesses, and what have you. The abuses of the past must be stopped. Capacity building by the telcos must be prioritized to the extent that at the end of the day, it becomes a win-win situation for both the subscribers, the mobile network operators, the Nigerian economy, and the people. That is just the bitter truth, which I think ordinary Nigerians should embrace. As I speak with you now, I spend more on data, I spend more on calls, yet it is not too easy. But then I have to just keep coping, anticipating that in the medium and the long term, it will be better for us all.
All right, thank you so much for that. But if you have to look at situation of things now, Nigerians are paying extra for fuel, they are paying extra for electricity, they are paying extra for food, even for rent now. A lot of things have had so much extra and extra on it. Now to telecommunication charges, so even to CBN, even POS operators now, they have also increased their prices. So perhaps we would say that, oh, this made NLC not very happy with this development, and then they've already voiced their displeasure and already instructing their members on what to do. Do you think that NLC's voicing displeasure and trying to have a protest about this particular increase, do you think it is justified, or perhaps they just need to understand that things are changing and then they just have to, you know, make do with what is available? What are your thoughts on that?
Wait, okay.
Hello?
Yeah, please, do you think it
Can
is
I
the
go on?
question?
I was responding, so I wasn't sure whether it was for me or for Mr. Akimutimi.
It's from, I think, let me just make a few comments before you take over. So, I think the Nigeria Labour Congress calling for a nationwide strike over this tariff regime of the telecom operators is expected. But what I think we should all know is that the labor leaders also should be conscious of the fact that, as Mr. Gbolahan has mentioned it, for 10 years, how much were they buying a cup of Gary? 2015. How much are they buying now? How much are they buying all the commodities? When you look at it, 13 years after, the telcos are saying, please, we just have to adjust. Like Mr. Gbolahan has said, I think the adjustment is reasonable and desirable for the benefit of all. All I think the NLC people should do should be more focusing on creating awareness about how Nigerians, subscribers who may be suffering one way or the other as a result of the tariff regime upward review, should champion their complaints to the extent that customers' interests are protected. The issue is not about organized labor. It is about the broad spectrum of Nigerian society. Mechanic, what do we call it, informal sector operators that are even the biggest or largest, percentage of the workforce. So for us, like Mr. Gbolahan said, we need to be realistic. We need to be sincere with ourselves as to how to go about it. The CBN tariff or whatever ATM charges, I think in real terms, people should go to the banks more now because they can have good money. The CBN has put up a directive that any bank that fails to transact or allow a customer to withdraw 20,000 naira per the withdrawal will be sanctioned. So if that enforcement or directive is fully enforced, there will be less demand for POS services and more Nigerians customers or bank customers will now explore the opportunities in the bank. For instance, if I want to take 40 and I can have access to it at 200 naira, I would rather prefer to pay the 200 naira rather than paying 600 naira to POS operator in my locality. So all these are things that are very, very complex, but integrated to the extent that all Nigerians, especially the bank customers, telecom operators, need to sit down. How do we go about it? Oh, my wife, you were using so data last year. Can you reduce? Oh, children, minimize. You yourself, like Mr. Agbola has said, if you want to spend 10 minutes discussing on things that ordinarily are not necessarily important, reduce to 4. You save costs. So what this presupposes is that we need to continue to cut our own costs within the possibilities at our disposal as bank customers, as telecom operators. But I think in the medium and long term, these adjustments that are now appearing so painful could be very, very beneficial to all stakeholders. That is what I think I want to say.
All right, thank you so much. And also, how do you see NOC's reaction to this increase by telecommunications operators? Do you think that their reaction is justified, or perhaps they could have handled it differently?
I think their reaction is actually comedic in a way, because what NLC has said was that they were going to abandon telecom services. And I actually look forward to see them abandon telecom services. Let all the members of NLC stop to use their telephones. They should not make call, they should not receive call. They should not use the internet, they should not check anything that has to do with data. When they have done it for 6 months, I promise that I will join them heartily in this their fight. So let them go ahead and abandon telecom services. If they do it for 1 week, I think what 1 week of abandonment will do to them is that it will make them to realize the importance of the service. And it probably will even swing them in the direction of supporting the reality that we must not allow those services to die. They are like the heart of our economy as we speak today. So nobody should stop them. They should go ahead and abandon all the services for 1 week or 6 months if they want. And we'll come back and talk about it after the abandonment.
You hope that they would also come to an understanding, and then you soon go to such extreme measures of leaving it for 6 months. But I think everyone knows that is going to be impossible. But now looking at the issue of CBN rate for ATM now, do you think that perhaps, like they've also told us, this is also something similar happening to the telecommunications sector too? There is also need to generate more money, and if no profit is coming in, then there's time to go back to the drawing table, because at the end of the day, the essence of doing business is to make profit. But now that CBN2 has already given this go-ahead for banks, and then they're even nice, I would say, because they gave each bank instruction of they could reduce it, they could reduce the 100 naira charges depending on their capacity. But do you think that perhaps this would in a way also encourage Nigerians to try to use alternative methods of payments, probably using transfer, using ATM cards to make payments rather than using cash? Perhaps it's time for us to go cashless. What do you think about that?
The interesting thing about this charge, or this newly introduced charge, is that it has been there before. It was the same CBN that removed it. Banks were, in times past, some years ago, once you're making withdrawal from other people's ATM, you pay. Then the CBN came and said, look, this is not encouraging the use of all these other platforms. Therefore, remove all these charges, let everybody be able to withdraw. So it was taken away, and now it is being returned. One of the reasons why it has been returned is actually the cost of operations as well. ATMs do have their cost of operations. And when it now has to involve the switch company, when you are doing transaction on another bank's platform, there is an intermediary in between. It's called the switch company. And they are also providing a service. So it seems as if in order to accommodate the general increase in operation is why this is being brought back. And it is easy to manage. It is presumed that most people open accounts at banks that are close to them, so that might have an ATM close to them. So you can easily avoid the charge by not doing transactions in those other people's bank if you want to totally avoid it. The alternative, like you mentioned, is this cash. We need to continue to minimize the use of cash. How do we do it that most of our transactions migrate onto other platforms that will not require that we withdraw cash? Actually, it's one of those things that we need to drive as much as possible. There is a little danger there, though, and I hope that that is not how the market will react. That little danger is that is there a possibility that some people might feel strongly enough that they will say, instead of putting my money in the bank and then coming back to pay charges to take it, maybe I should keep it away from the bank. Now, that is a negative possibility, but I hope that that is not the way the market will react. Because if it reacts that way, then there will be less and less cash being taken to the bank. Like we saw after the aftermath of the CBN policy that changed cash a couple of years ago, that changed our notes a couple of years ago. That was pretty strongly negative on our market. So I hope this one also will not take the direction of leaning on that negative edge of it, in which people will say, I don't want to pay charges, therefore I'm not going to take my money to the bank. That's just what I think.
Thank you so much for that. Well, I'm sure at least Nigerians now should have a clearer picture on why it is important to pay these extra charges, and it's just something that we have to endure. But it also raises this fear of, is this what we are in for? Do we always have to deal with this issue of increase in prices of goods and services all the time? When are we going to reach that stability point? Well, I think we would all probably be we're having other discussions to address that question.